So we are going to start today's session, and that is on the cluster analysis in health research. So the previous two workshops were on the semi-quantitative type of qualitative research. That was on the free listing, pile sorting, and the MDS. So you can just see like we have shifted from that MDS, that is the multidimensional scaling, to this cluster analysis. So cluster analysis basically, that is quite often these days we are using it in health research. And in today's session, we are basically covering two most common type of cluster analysis, and there are two breakout room activity. So one breakout room activity probably we will have after approximately after 1 hour 15 minutes of the session, and next the second one approximately after 2.5 hours. So let's start today's session. So the reference, we have used a few articles. We have shared those articles with all of you, and we have used this book, which is the book by the published by Willy, and the authors are Everett and the Sabine Landau. You can see here. This book is written. You can say a lot of mathematical equations are there, because we will see towards when we go for the individual component of the cluster analysis that basically we measure the distance. So the whole cluster analysis is on how we are measuring the distance. So it is most of the formulas which are happening in the background, that is a mathematical equation. So we'll start with this thing. We all shop through Amazon or many other like Myntra and many other online shopping app. So have you ever received such kind of messages like you have put this in the cart but you have not bought this, or do you want to have another look, or based on your shopping items, uh, can you see that you get messages like this or mails like this? What is your answer? You can type in the chat box or you can share your experience also.
Yes, heaps of times.
Okay, yes. And in YouTube also, once you open any type of news, or let's say if my favorite is to see how I can do the breathing technique, or how in what way I should probably do something. Let's say if I am seeing the how to cook a butter chicken, then you will see in YouTube also that whenever you open next, it automatically keeps sending you those kind of YouTube videos. Have you ever experienced this?
Yes.
Yes. And so you will see that, the way you like browse something, the AI, it automatically detects like what are your areas of interest, in what areas you wish to look up more or you wish to see more, and it will keep recommending those type of, that's known as the algorithm basically. So that algorithm is working everywhere these days. And the cluster analysis, it is very much useful. We do it in health also, but in marketing there's a lot of value of this cluster analysis in marketing, in business research, because basically they see the clustering of the clients, what type of clients are interested in the home gadgets, what type of clients they are mostly in the electronic gadgets, on what age group, etc. So this also, if you see, this is what, this is the, just I have taken a screenshot of a Netflix. So Netflix, you can see how they categorize or cluster things. Like you can see here, first is like movie based on real life, and then you can see the movies, the Hindi language movies, or casual viewing, or suspenseful movies. So when you open the Netflix also, it gives you the movies under the categorization, and then there is a specific category of, like, let's say for kids, whenever you open that, it writes like Amazon Prime or Netflix for kids or for a specific adult. So also they cluster or they categorize, and they keep such kind of movies in that log or in that list. So this is again useful, and you will see a lot of people now, they are doing the cluster analysis on the Netflix content also. So based on this, now if I ask from you, what is cluster analysis? So as the term suggests, what do we mean by cluster? Cluster means like you can see a group. If I just go by the literal meaning, so cluster is a kind of group. So group, generally we do this grouping. There are various methods of doing this grouping. In qualitative analysis also, whenever you group the codes to make a category, those of you who are doing qualitative analysis, there also when we go for initial coding and when you merge the codes into category, basically we are going for the clustering of those codes. But that particular, that's an English term. Here the cluster analysis which you are seeing, that's a kind of a mathematical technique where we use the distance between the two objects or two patients or two variables to group them together. So basically the whole analysis, it is on the similarity and dissimilarity. So we move all the objects or patients into a cluster who are similar to each other. So that is a similarity index. So whatever is the similarity, it is the opposite of dissimilarity. So it will be dissimilar to the others. So it is distinct from the others, but it is similar to the rest of the patients. So it is the similarity. So objects in a cluster, they are similar to each other, but the less similar clusters, they are put, objects are put in the other cluster. That is the dissimilarity. So it is basically, we use this cluster analysis in a unsupervised kind of analysis. So what is unsupervised here? Generally, whenever we do any, let's say we are doing regression or we are doing logistic or linear regression, we tell the computer that this is the outcome. So disease positive or negative or a particular dependent variable, or there are, we feed the data like this is the diseased or non-diseased. But in this case, whenever you move the variable, you don't give the command or you don't move that variable where you see that there is a diseased yes or diseased no. So that is known as the unsupervised kind of analysis where we don't give a clearly defined outcome. So basically it is exploratory in nature. Exploratory means like it is not defined beforehand and we just want to see based on the data and the variable what is the pattern in our data. So it is very common in the clinical phenotyping and risk stratification. So I will just explain what is this clinical phenotype and the risk stratification. So otherwise also, even if we don't use this cluster analysis, in our day-to-day life or in our clinical setup, we often use this implicit clustering, which is based on our experience. Like for phenotype of diabetes or for risk stratification. But this cluster analysis, basically what it does, that clinical intuition which we have, it just formalizes this clinical intuition into the a visible sort of cluster and based on, because it will be based on data, so we can use this for the clinical judgment, and this is more of an objective criteria, then it is not a subjective criteria. For example, this, if you see the example of this clinical intuition, if you are sitting in a OPD and if a young patient comes to you, let's say 32-year old patient, and the blood pressure, you check the blood pressure of that patient and the blood pressure is normal and he is not suffering from the diabetes currently and he is not a smoker also. The way we do the risk stratification, so we will say that okay, he is not into any risk. But again, if a person, the age is 55-year-old and his BP is high and he is having diabetes, but currently he is not having any smoking status, and then we will say yes, you have a moderate risk, because there are two risk factors. There's a diabetes also, age is also a risk factor, and high blood pressure is also a risk factor, which we know from our clinical knowledge that these are the risk factor. Again, there's a third patient C comes to you who is having who is 62-year-old. Blood pressure is high, diabetes is also there, and he is a smoker. Then definitely what we'll say, see, you have got three risk factor, so you comes under the high risk. So this is like implicit here. You are not analyzing the data to categorize such risk grouping as low, moderate, or high risk group. These are just the clinical intuition. Similarly, while doing the behavioral characteristics also or patient profiling also, many times we always say this. Whenever we see some patients, based on our experience, we say that okay, this patient is not going to come, or this patient, generally with the females, we always say that whenever you consult them, they will not listen anything, and then they will ask one of their male caregiver, father or brother or husbands, to again listen to the same advice. Or we might say that this patient will not come. He's coming only for the first time. If you are very experienced, we have seen many people with kind of doctor shopping, where they keep on moving from one doctor to another doctor and they just don't follow advice. So by just interacting with those patients, you can many time a kind of you roughly guess like what type of behavior this patient will show in the future. So we are using something subconsciously because it is based on our experience, based on socioeconomic status, or based on the type of health belief which the patient has, or how that patient has behaved in the past. Probably if you have, like if he's coming from some other department where you can see that whatever advice were given, he has not followed them up. So based on that past behavior, or if there is no one in the family, or the patient is alone or not married or a broken family, so seeing that family support, or maybe if he's very residing at a very distant place, seeing all these variables, definitely these variables are there in your subconscious mind, and you are using these variables only to say about these behaviors where the patient is non-adherent or not going to come, or he will be very frequently coming, or he is very adherent. We quite a time we see that there are people who are very adherent, and a person which is adherent in one domain of life, he will be adherent in mostly other domains also. So that is based on our subconscious decision, but again that implicit clustering we are using in our day to day life. So this basically this in hypertension clinic also, we may define like there is an adherent group which is like educated, and there is a resistant group if you give them the polypharmacy, or if they are having multiple morbidities, they will be resistant group, and there are groups which are in between these two groups. So these are again all implicit clustering, and these are the clinical intuition or are intuition based. Now this article, this got published in 2018, which was the which says that novel subgroup of adult onset diabetes and their association with outcomes, a data driven cluster analysis of 6 variable. So what they did, like they just they saw that traditionally we classify diabetes in type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes, and but the author has experience, and you all know also that type 2 diabetes is quite heterogeneous. In type 2 diabetes also, a lot of variations you will see. It is not like you cannot fit all those patients into one pattern. So what he observed, that there is a need of refined classification which will provide the tool to individualize the treatment and to identify the individuals who are at a risk of complications, or probably at a risk of, here in this article they have studied the risk of complications. So what they have done, they have done the two most common type of clustering method, which is the, you can see here, this is the k-mean and the hierarchical clustering with the newly diagnosed patients, and then they have used these 6 variables. So what variables they have used? They have used glutamate decarboxylase antibodies, age at diagnosis, the body mass index, the HbA1c, the homeostatic model assessment 2 estimates of beta cell function, and the insulin resistance. So they have taken these 6 variables and they have taken the prospective data. So after doing the cluster analysis, what they have seen, that they have identified 5 clusters with patients of diabetes and who were significantly different. What they have seen, like patients who were there in the cluster 3, they were mostly resistant to insulin and they had a significantly higher risk of the diabetic kidney disease than the individuals who are there in cluster 4 and 5. But they had been prescribed the similar treatment as with the other cluster. On the contrary, the cluster 2, which was insulin deficient, they were having a highest risk of retinopathy. So they have just said that based on these clustering, there should be targeting of you can individualize the treatment. And that's the beauty of the clustering or the cluster method. So by these examples, so what we have done till now, that clustering is a method which assigns individual based on the similarity and dissimilarity. Based on similarity, we put individuals into one cluster, and based on dissimilarity, we distinguish a particular cluster from a different cluster. Secondly, we have learned that in everyday practice also, we have some experience of clustering through our subconscious mind, because it's our experience based, not entirely based on the data driven, rather based on our experience also, we do define people into clusters. And that, even if you see the clustering, we experience it with our students also. In students also, you will see, based on your experience, you can say like if this student is there and he is very regular in attending all the clinical posting and very regular in attending all the semester exams, definitely the outcome will be good. So you can perform the these clusterings, and then clustering of like on gender based clustering also, like maybe male female. Even we have seen this with the batch wise also, alternate batch here in the AIMS Patna. Like if 2023 batch was very sincere, 2024 batch is less sincere, again 2025 batch is very much sincere. But that we are just saying implicitly without any data driven and just by our experience. So we can use the same analysis for our students also. Their profiling, we can do their profiling also. So this cluster analysis, if you see the types of cluster analysis, like I said in the beginning, basically 2 types of cluster analysis we most commonly use. But there are, if you classify the clustering, the first type of clustering method is the partitioning method. So what is partitioning? Partitioning means, like in a room, if you make a partition, what you do? A person who can enter in one room, that is very much clearly separated from the other room. So this partitioning method means you have clear cut clusters, and that's how the beauty of partitioning method. And the second is your hierarchical clustering. So what is hierarchical clustering? In hierarchical clustering, you are not partitioning. Rather, you start from all the individual, and then you keep on merging those individual to form a overall cluster. We will see these one by one, but I'm just explaining this right now. The third method is the density based methods. Density based method means like basically mostly it is done in the machine learning, where they see the clustering based on the particular visual maps. And then in the visual map, if something is very much condensed, like you can see this in our epidemiology, we see this spot mapping, and we do this spot mapping and density of the cases. So based on that density of the cases, or this geographical information system, GIS, that also works on this clustering of this density based method in the health, because that particularly see the density of cases in a particular geographical locations, but generally it is morely in the, you can say, in the machine learning and less commonly done in the health. So in health, basically we use these two type of method, which is the partitioning method and the hierarchical method. So it basically answers this question, like how should we merge the patients or the cases individually to one group. So entirely the method of merging and the way we measure the distance. This clearly delineates the partitioning method and the hierarchical method. Now coming to the first type of clustering, which is the partitioning. So partitioning, like the term suggests, clear cut cluster. You make partition. So there are two ways of doing it. First is the most commonly is the k-mean clustering, and it divides the data set into the k distinct cluster. Now what is this k? We will see in the analysis that you say to the software how many cluster you want to have. So that is the k distinct cluster, means if you give the software a command of 3, it will give you 3 clusters. There are ways to decide for this number of clusters. We will talk on that also. But it divides your data set into the k distinct cluster, and each data point that only belongs to that cluster. There is no overlap. That's how the name is. Partition means there is no overlap. So each data point that belongs to only one cluster, and like I said, we decide the number of cluster in advance, and that we decide based on the hierarchical clustering. So it is useful when you have got a large data set. Generally in health, like I said, we go for this k-mean clustering or the partitioning method, and when the clusters are well separated. So k-mean clustering, that is one way of doing the, like it's a partitioning method. It is again like doing a type of clustering, and it is the most common type of partition method. Here in each cluster we represent by a centroid. So what is a centroid? Basically centroid is a average profile. We will see what is a centroid, but you till for now you can see, like to measure distance, we take a centroid, and centroid is like the average of the all the variables which in particular group it has. So that is known as the centroid. But it has got some limitation, because generally the k-mean, it is for the continuous variable. And as such also, if you see GEMOV, the type of the two methods, the k-mean and hierarchical, that is, it works only if your data is continuous. It doesn't take if it has got a categorical variable, because for categorical variable the methods there are some other methods which are there in the R and Python and in any other statistical software. But for GEMOV, it you can do this partitioning based clustering if you have got the continuous variable preferred for that. And then you can have like you can make a specific clusters for like gender wise or any other category. And it is sensitive to outliers, means you if your data has got many outlier, and then we check also for outliers in the box plot, then the k-mean clustering is not a preferred way of doing the cluster. And like we know in the partitioning method, you have to define the clusters, the number of clusters beforehand. So that's the prerequisite for a k-mean clustering. We will see all this. Maybe I don't know how much sense I am making to you right now, because those of you where you are listening all these terms for the first time, it may not be that much clear. But as we will move ahead, things will start getting clearer. The second method is the k-medoid. This is again, there we use the centroid, and here we use the medoid. Medoid is basically, like you can see, the centroid is based on mean, and this medoid is like based on the median, but it is very similar to the k-mean, and it uses the actual data points rather than the, there we use a, first like we take random. It is more robust to outlier, but we will learn today the k-mean. We will not learn the k-medoid. Now the second is is for the partitioning method. Partitioning method has got k-mean and k-medoid. The k-mean we will learn today, and that k-mean although it is sensitive to outlier, but we will learn that k-mean clustering, and you have to tell the cluster in advance. Now the second is your hierarchical clustering. So hierarchical clustering, what it does, it doesn't give you a clear cut partition. It just, what it does, it keeps on merging based on the distance, the number of people, and then ultimately it merges all the people under the one cluster. So it, what it does, it builds up the cluster step by step, and it uses like a series of groupings, and it is not the final answer, because the dendrogram, it doesn't tell you that you have got two clusters or three cluster. That you have to decide, seeing the dendrogram, how much cluster do you want. We will see this. So it is a subjective, and it is not a final answer, and results are usually shown as the tree diagram or a dendrogram. So this is, for example, you can see the dendrogram appears like this. So this is the dendrogram of the anthropometric and the biochemical variables causing food deformities using the hierarchical clustering analysis. So you can see here, that's how it appears. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, you can see they have merged these clusters together. Then 5 is separate. Then they have merged this 5 and this 1, 2, 3. Again, this 6 and 7 they have merged. And then similarly 8 and 9. Then they have merged these two. So this is how you can see there is a x-axis and there is a y-axis. So here on the y-axis, you can see all these variables are there, which they have used, like weighted metatarsal width, weighted metatarsal width right and left. And you can see mostly all these variables are the continuous variable. I can see here they have used gender also below. That this thing that is not working. Now let me see the pointer. So you can see this one. They have used here gender, and here you can see all the variables which they have used here. It is basically the continuous variable, and they have defined two clusters. This is cluster 1 and this is cluster 2. The two broad clusters. Although we will see how you can define the cluster, the number of cluster. Then next is your hierarchical. In the hierarchical method also, there are basically two ways of doing this hierarchy. So there is a, and in hierarchical, like in k-mean, what we have done, that you need a pre-specified number of clusters to define this. But in hierarchical method, it is you who will decide how will, how many number of clusters you should have. So it shows the clusters merging step by step, and it is useful for the initial. Whenever you are going, you first do the exploratory analysis using dendrogram, and then you go for the k-mean. So today also we will first do the hierarchical clustering, and then we will go for the k-mean clustering. So it is a visual tool basically. It doesn't give you any statistical tool, that means like a clear cut partitioning or clear cut decision that you have to take. So you just have to see the visual representation of the dendrogram, and then you have to decide the number of variables. So like I said, there are basically two types of hierarchical clustering. The first one is known as the agglomerative hierarchical clustering. So if you start from the individual patient and then keep on merging those patients or the variables, whatever cluster you are taking, then it is a bottom up. So each data point that starts as a cluster, and then you keep on merging those cluster, and then ultimately you make a larger cluster. So today we will learn this agglomerative type of hierarchical clustering. And in health, you will see mostly these agglomerative hierarchical clustering is done. The second type of hierarchical clustering is the divisive, where you start from the top and then you keep on breaking the clusters into the individual unit. So this is the divisive. So all data points start as one cluster, and then you split these smaller clusters into other smaller clusters step by step. But it is less commonly used in health. So this you can see here if you see the direction. So if I start with A, B, C, D, 5 individual data point, I have merged A and B, then I have merged D and E. And then I have merged this D and E with C. And here again I have merged A, B and C, D, E to form one cluster. So if my direction is towards this, you can see direction is towards this. This is agglomerative. That means I have started with individual data point, and I am keeping these data points merging till a overall cluster. If my direction is the other way around, that is the divisive. Like I have started with A, B, C, D, then I have broken these A, B, C, D into A, B and C, D, E. Then again I have broken the C, D, E into C and D, E, and then again like individual like A, B, C, D, and E. So this is like a example of a hierarchical tree structure, and this is basically the difference between the agglomerative and the divisive. But like I said, in health, generally most commonly it is the agglomerative type of the hierarchical clustering which is done. So this is the most common type, and it is also known as the bottom-up clustering. Here each individual is acting as a separate cluster, and overall all individual combines into the one single cluster. So this is agglomerative clustering. So third is the density-based methods. So in density-based methods, like I said, the cluster are formed on the density, and we know the density, it is mass by the area. So it takes it is more than one dimension. So it is 3-4 dimension, and that's why it tells you the density. So wherever there are areas of high density, it forms the cluster, and where there are sparse region, those are the outliers or those are the noise. So what cluster analysis is not? So that is also very important. So the cluster analysis, like I said, it is exploratory, and I have also used a term which is the unsupervised. That means you don't tell the software which are the in this case, like today's we'll see like CAD risk or CAD not no risk. That means we are not telling the actual disease status. So what cluster analysis is not? So it is not a prediction. That means alone, of course, you can club, as you will see in many articles, they have clubbed these clusters with the prediction. Means after this, using cluster, they do like binomial logistic regression or multivariate logistic regression or multivariate analysis. But isolated, if you see this cluster analysis, this is not a prediction. This is not a hypothesis based, because initially, like I said, it is exploratory in nature. You don't go the way we go for all other statistical tests. So we don't have any hypothesis here. So it is not a hypothesis testing, and like it is not no modeling, no regression. So remember, although you will see many clustering technique, later on you go with prediction, but this clustering per se is not a prediction. So it is exploratory, it is not a confirmatory. It is of course exploratory, but this is a quantitative way of doing a exploration. So in clustering or in cluster analysis, what get clustered? So you can do the clustering of the people, that is a patient. You do the clustering of the diseases. You can see the clustering of hospitals. We were just going through few videos where they are using this cluster analysis where to open a pizza parlor. It was classically done, because in market, like if you have to open something, you just go and see wherever the shop is there. But we don't go by all these analysis of the data. But if you see like MACD and all these chains, they do a lot of cluster analysis before where they should put no their outlet so that there should be maximum sale. So or in health also you can do that, where you should open a hospital, because many times you will see like hospitals, they are open in some very distant area. So you can use this for every all the you know decision making process. Then what variables to be used? So you can generally, we have seen that generally you should use quantitative variable. So you can use the clinical variable, you can use the socio-demographic variable. In lab markers also, these days you will see a lot of genetic studies. People are using this cluster analysis to see the accumulation or the clustering of genes. So that is very commonly done these days, and you can also use the variables of our behavior like smoking or adherence pattern of the patient. So that can also be used. So it is a unsupervised learning, because cluster analysis here, you don't have any outcome. You have outcome variable in your data, but you don't feed that data and the pattern that emerged from the data. So common mistakes which we do while doing cluster, that is you assume causality. But again, there's no hypothesis testing, no causality. Using too many variables. If you see the papers which are published in very good journals, let's say Nature, or one article which I've just shown you, that diabetes profile, they've used like 6 variables. So you should not be using too many variables, because then it will be difficult probably to use that in that sense also. And then your clinical judgment is the top priority. So because you start the clustering, like Dr. Shamshad did few cluster analysis of the pattern of this anti-nuclear ANA, like SLE. So like biochemistry, Dr. Mala, like she came with the data of all the SLE and that antigens, no? 18 antigens. So she wanted to see, because she felt while doing those antigen assay, that there are few antigens which go like which tend to cluster. So that is under publication. That's why we have not shared that manuscript with you people. But again, uh, your clinical sense, because she felt that this will go together, and then they performed the cluster analysis, and that was like it was right also. And then whatever she was thinking, because that also comes out of experience, so they could see it in the data, that like particular, like let's see 3, 7 and 8 gene, all the those three were moving together. So your clinical sense is very important. You should not ignore your clinical sense. Now, we will try to demonstrate whatever we have learned through a small data set. So let's say that's why we have used only 6 patients and only one variable right now. But when we will see in the GEMOB, there will be number of patients will be more, and number of variables will also be more. We again keep repeating these things, like you don't have to do the calculation. Whatever calculations we are showing it here, that is happening in the background. You just have to click the command of GEMOV and you will get the cluster. But what is happening in the background, it is important for us to know, so that whenever we are interpreting it, we should be able to understand. So that's why please don't feel very much fearful if you see those distances, the formulas, how they are calculated. You don't have to do anything. Okay, so with this thing background, you just have to understand. So this is the 6 patients, and you can see this is the fasting blood glucose of all these 6 patients. So now we are first, like I said, whenever we have to do the cluster analysis, we start with the hierarchical clustering. Because hierarchical clustering in K-mean, what we learned, that you need to have a predefined number of clusters. And then you see whatever predefined, whether you get a clear-cut partition or not. Okay. So here, this hierarchical clustering helps you to decide on the number of clusters. Okay, the way, remember logistic regression or the regression, how we decide which variables are important. So we go for the unadjusted odds, we go for the unadjusted like 2 by 2 and then see the p value, and when we used to include only those variables which were having like p value of less than zero point 0.2, that cutoff. Similarly, how many clusters we should have, to decide on that we have to go for this hierarchical clustering. So how this is done? So in hierarchical clustering, there is one is like how you decide about the distance, and then second is how you merge those two data point. So this hierarchical clustering, this use the minimum distance, and this is known as the single linkage. We are introducing few terms also, because maybe when you have to do the write up, how you have done the data analysis, there you might need to write what is hierarchical and what type of hierarchical you have used. So in agglomerative also there is a single linkage, and then there are other like average linkage and maximum linkage. So but those all details you don't need to know. You can use this minimum distance, which is the single linkage, which is most commonly done. And then we will try to show you the proximity matrix at each stage. So what is proximity matrix? Basically, you merge the two clusters seeing the less distance, like minimum distance. So this is like first initial proximity matrix. And distance, how do we define the distance? Distance is the absolute value of these two measure. For example, so how to plot this? So what you do, basically the proximity matrix, you write this. I mean, you don't have to do, again I said, this the software is doing in the background. So what it does, it for demonstration purpose we are showing it. So we have written the same in the row and in the column. Now I have to calculate the distance between these two data point. So if you calculate the distance between 92 and 92, what will be the distance? Yes, all of you please write in the chat box. Seeing the value. 0. Very right. So I have filled 0 here. What will be the distance between the 92 and 96? All of you please write in the chat box. 4. Very right. What will be the distance between 101 and 92? So we have to take the mode. If you see here, it is the mode. That means absolute value. So that's why you don't need to be like plus and minus. So Dr. Hema has written 9. Yes. So similarly, you calculate the distance. True. For all the variables. So this is the first step. This is the initial proximity matrix. Now you have to look for the minimum distance between the two variables. So just two numbers means two data point. Rather, I will be using the term data point. So which is apart from 0, because 0 is between the two. 0 will be all diagonal because it is the distance from the same cluster. So that will be 0. So but same number, sorry, same data point. Now which is the minimum distance here in this table? Can all of you please write in the chat box? Between two numbers. 4. Yes, true. It is between which two data point? This 4 is between which two data point? So can I say this 4 is? Yeah, very right. It is between 96 and 92. Yeah, very right. So what I'll do, I will merge these two, 92 and 96. Now I will again write the distances and measure the distance. So what will be the distance between 92 and 96? No, they are the same variable. I am doing the clustering. It's the value actually. It is the, if you go back, yeah, I'll go back. Just see this. These are the 6 patients and these are the 6 values of the fasting blood sugar. So they are not two different continuous variable. They are the same variable, but for two different patients. So instead, I mean, all two means I am talking about 92 and 96. That's why I have used two. That means 92 and 96. If you cluster this, I am clustering with this values. Ideally, this is the clustering of patient 1 and 2, which is I am not showing you. Why? Because you cannot measure the distance if I write 1 and 2. So that's why I am showing you with the variables. So this 92 and 96 is the fasting blood sugar. Actually, the clustering is happening of patient 1 and 2. So, did you get it, Morgan? Okay, thank you. So, just uh, take a picture of this figure in your brain, that this is the patient number and this is the fasting blood sugar. And then keep on referring that. Then it will be easy for you to understand. But again, I will also keep coming on this so that you should not forget what is this fasting blood sugar. These are the individual values. So we did this, and now what we have done, we have merged the 92 and 96 uh, data point. Right. Now I will again measure the distance between all the clusters, all the data point, and these two clusters. So what will be the distance of 90 to 96 with each other here? Yes, so Paramita has written 0. Now, if I have to calculate the distance between 90 to 96 and 101, then which distance I will take? 101 minus 92 or 101 minus 96? Yes, all of you please write in the chat box. Mode is okay, but here there are, if I subtract 101 from 92, it will be 9. And if I subtract 101 from 96, it will be 5. So should I take 9 or should I take 5 here? So remember, we have used the term in single linkage, the minimum distance. I'll again come here. So in this, we are using minimum distance, single linkage method. Okay. So if there are two distances, 9 and 5, we will use the minimum. So minimum is 5. So that's why I have written 5. Similarly, with 108 and 92 to 96, which distance I will use? All of you type in the chat box. So I will use 108 minus 96. Yes. So that's why 12. Similarly, similarly we will measure these distances. Now you just see this and then tell us which is the minimum distance here in this table. Between which two data point? 5. Very true. But can you see 5 at two places? Yeah. So 92, very right. 92, 96 and 101. This one, 90 to 96, yes. And there is one, very right. Paramita has written it, 165 and 160. Right. So now what I will do? I will merge these two. 160, 165 and 92 to 96. And again, these are the distances which I have measured. Again, if you see, the minimum distance is again, you people have merged it together. So we have merged 90 to 96 and 101 and 160 to 165. Now if you see this distance again, which is the minimum distance? It is the 7. So 7 is between the 90 to 96, 101 and 108. So what I'll do? I will merge 90 to 96, 101 and 108, and this is to 160 to 165. And then there will be one overall cluster. Right. So this is the way you keep, the software keeps on merging the cluster. If you use the single linkage, taking the distance. And like I said in the beginning, this whole calculation is done on the dissimilarity and similarity matrix. So similarity matrix is based on the nearest distance. So the closer or in the proximity, it will keep it in one cluster. and if it is distant from the other, it will be the next will be kept on the other cluster. Right. So this way the hierarchical clustering is complete. So you can see this is the dendrogram. You start with the 92 to 96 and then you club this 101. So 92 to 96 and 101 this got clubbed. Then again this 101 and 108 this again got clubbed, and this 162 165. So this is the way we have come to know this is the agglomerative, because what we have learnt in the agglomerative, you start with the individual data point and then you keep on merging. So if you see here, the first one, we have started with the individual data point and then subsequently we kept on merging 92 to 96, and then we have merged 92 to 96 with the 101 and 160 to 165. So this is the bottom up. So this is known as the agglomerative hierarchical clustering. The divisive is other way, but we are not going to learn divisive because that is not commonly used. So most commonly is the agglomerative. So that's the background which is happening in case of a agglomerative hierarchical clustering, which is the bottom up clustering. So am I making sense to all of you up till this point? Devjani has said yes. Okay. Hemlata. Okay, Hema. Thank you, Devjani and Hema. So we will, Dr. Ajay has also said, okay. So now, how do we do the clinical interpretation? So if you see this, these are the values. If you can recall, these are the fasting blood sugar values. So what clinical interpretation I will do? So I will say that there is one cluster where the range of these blood sugar is from 92 to 108. So they may be under the pre-diabetic spectrum or the normoglycemia. And then there is another cluster which is like 160 to 165, which is poor glycemic control and which are having a high CAD risk. So this will be the clinical interpretation of the two cluster. So this is the SNP of Jamovi. We are going to learn this soon. So in agglomerative hierarchical clustering, basically, like I said, there are two decisions which needs to be made. The first is how you are going to measure the distance. So if you see in the drop-down menu, there are many options. Like there is a Euclidean distance, Manhattan distance, maximum, Canberra, binary, and Minkowski. But in generally you will see that most commonly it is the Euclidean distance which is measured. So we will click on this Euclidean distance, and the distance which we have learned, that's a type of Euclidean distance only. The second is like what method of clustering you will use. So one option is like distance measure, and the second is your clustering method. So in clustering method, if you see, these are the various methods. We have just seen the single linkage. Remember the minimum distance. But there are other ways also, like centroid, complete, average, McVitie, and median. So we most commonly and most recent is WOD D2. And we use this WOD D2 method of clustering. Now we don't need to understand how this WOD 2 causes clustering, because that is a complex mathematical this thing, and even we tried to learn this but we could not interpret it. So we just stopped at that point, and we have just concluded that let's go simple, and this is since most commonly done, so we did not dig further into this WOD D2, but we know that this is the most commonly way of linkage once you choose this Euclidean distance. So like I said that hierarchical clustering is one way of doing it, but if you choose the linkage method, it may change the dendrogram on your choice of choosing a particular way of linkage. So like I said, for all clinical phenotyping and the biomarker clustering, we use the Euclidean distance, and the what to method of clustering. And then we will validate, once you decide on the basis of dendrogram, then you use the k-mean. And k-mean is what? K-mean is a type of partitioning method where you have a clear-cut cluster. And then you, in the input, you give that number of cluster to decide about the clear-cut clustering. So this was the article which we have used. We have created the data set of this article. So this got published in Nature, and you can see this is the cluster analysis, a new approach for identification of underlying risk factors for coronary artery disease in the essential hypertensive patients. So the author is saying that grading of hypertension according to blood pressure level may not adequately reflect the clinical heterogeneity of hypertension, the way we have learned for diabetes also. So this study was carried out to explore the clinical phenotypes in essential hypertensive patients using cluster analysis, and they have recruited 513 hypertensive patients, and they have evaluated the blood pressure variations with ambulatory blood pressure monitoring, and they have come up with the 4 distinct hypertension groups in the cluster analysis. Younger male smokers with relatively high BP had the most severe carotid plaque thickness but no carotid artery disease. Older women with relatively low diastolic BP had more diabetes. Non-smoker with low systolic BP had neither diabetes nor CAD, and hypertensive patients with blood pressure reverse dipping were most likely to have CAD but had least severe carotid plaque thickness. So cluster analysis, it has shown to be a feasible approach for investigating the heterogeneity of essential hypertension in the clinical studies. So we have used this, the variables of this particular report to recreate a data set for the practice in this workshop. So now coming to the k-mean clustering. So till now we have done the this dendrogram, that is the hierarchical clustering, and the type of hierarchical clustering is the agglomerative clustering. So hierarchical clustering is important to decide the number of clusters which you will put as an input in the k-mean clustering. And the k-mean clustering is a type of partitioning way of doing the clustering when you have a clear-cut cluster. So you can use, like, if I want to put them in 2 cluster, I can use the k is equal to 2 to split the patients into 2 cluster. That which we did with that example where there was a blood sugar of fasting blood sugar of all those patients. So this is one example again. Here in all hypertensive patients, and like I said, it is an unsupervised learning. So I am not going to put this hypertension status, whether they are hypertensive or not. So I am just taking these as a patients. So in this example, I am using only glucose for now to use this k-mean to demonstrate how this k-mean works when you go for this option. So you can see here the various glucose levels and of all these 9 patients. So for k-mean clustering, you have to choose the initial centroid. So like I said, that centroid is, you can put from that centroid, you calculate the distance. So we choose or we compute the distance using that centroid, and then we assign each point to the nearest centroid. And then we recalculate the new centroid, and new centroid is again mean of each cluster. And we repeat this process until the cluster assignment do not change it. And we will, these are just, I have just read whatever is written here, but we will see this, because this you will not understand unless you see this. So in this case, like I said, for all this we calculate the Euclidean distance, and the Euclidean distance is the absolute distance if there are variables. So this x stands for the variable which you have taken, and this m is the centroid which you choose. So, and you take the value of absolute value. So, whether it is 12 minus 7 or 2 minus 7, the value will be the same. So, how do we do this? So, first, in first iteration, you have to choose the initial centroid. Initial centroid means any point you choose and then you calculate the distance from that. So let's say the first centroid is 5.2. So this is your 5.2, and that because now why you have chosen two centroid, because if you remember, I have, my goal is to group the hypertensive patients into two phenotype. So remember, in, and probably you can say I have decided this with the dendrogram. Dendrogram also, we have made the dendrogram, remember, and there also uh, I have clubbed them into two category. Remember, like we have clubbed 92 to let's say I think 100 and something, and then the other group was 160 to 165. So based on dendrogram, I have decided for two clusters. Okay, and those two clusters I will use here as a, just to check whether there is a clear cut partitioning or not. So that's why I have written here as I want to group these hypertensive patients into two phenotypes based on blood glucose level. So that's why since beginning only I have decided for two clusters. So now that's why I have taken two centroid. Centroid means 2 points from where I will calculate the distance. So first point I have taken as 5.2 and the second point I have taken as 10.5. Now let's calculate the distance. So what I will do, I will write how it is done. I mean, just to demonstrate this, we have done this. All the patients are being, I have written all the patients like this and the glucose level like this. And these are the two centroid, like 5.2 and 10.5. Remember? 5.2 and 10.5. Now I will calculate the distance of this 4.8 to 5.2. So now all of you please calculate what will be the distance of 4.8 to 5.2. Can you put that response? 0.4, right? So this is 0.4. And what will be the distance of 4.8 to 10.5? 10.5 minus 4.8, 5.7. Similarly, you calculate the distance of 5.2 with 5.2 will be 0. And then again, similarly, you calculate the distance. Once you calculate the distance, now you have to see which is the lowest, I mean the minimal distance. So minimal distance between 0.4 to 5.7, this is 0.4. So this patient will go in cluster 1. So that's why I've written cluster 1. Similarly, this is the least, this is in the same because we have chosen this as a centroid. So this will go in C1. Again, this 0.4 and 4.9. This 0.4 is least. So it will go in cluster C1, first cluster. In 4.5 and 0.8, 0.8 is less. So you have to look for the lowest out of these two and then assign that. So since it will go in cluster 1. Similarly, 2.6 and 2.7. So 2.6 is less, so it will go in cluster 1. How about these? Here you see these are the less distances as compared to this. So all this will go in cluster 2. So this is the initial cluster label. Did you get it? Am I making sense to all of you up till this point? This we are doing the k-mean clustering. And for k-mean, we have to choose an initial centroid. So we have chosen two centroid and we are calculating the distance. Can I see the chat box? Okay. Now, once you assign these clusters, now you have to calculate the new centroid. And how will we calculate the new centroid? So you have to take the mean of all C1, that will be the new centroid, and mean of all C2, that will be the second new centroid. So clusters after iteration, in cluster C1, you have got these values: 4.8, 5.2, 5.6, 6 and 7.8. In cluster 2, you have got 8.2, 8.6, 10.5 and 11. So your new mean or new centroid will be, you take the mean of these. Now the centroid will change. It will be 5.88 and 9.57. Okay. So now what you will do? You will write here the new centroid, 5.88 and 9.57. Now again you calculate the distance. So distance, it will be 1.08, and from this it will be 4.77. And then you calculate the distance likewise. Now you see, these were the old clusters. So all these, up till this point it was in cluster C1, and then it was in cluster C2. But after the new centroid, you can see now this distance is less. So this C1 will now go to C2. So this C1 will move to C2, and this will be your new cluster. The initial cluster, this patient number 5 was there in the cluster 1. But after the second iteration, this patient 5 has moved to the cluster 2. Now again you will calculate a centroid. I mean, you will not calculate, the software calculates. So the new centroid, so these are the, for after iteration 2, in the cluster 1, it is all these values: 4.8, 5.2, 5.6 and 6. And in cluster 2, it is 7.8, 8.2, 8.6, 10.5 and 11. So what will be your new mean? So your new mean will be, you add all these and take a mean. So 5.4 will be the new centroid, first one, and 9.22 will be the second centroid. Then again you calculate the distance of these individual point two from between these centroid. So it will be like this, and this is my old cluster. Again I calculate the distance and then see which is the minimal. So this is 0.6, so this will go in C1, so new cluster is C1. This is 0.2, so it will again go to C1. 0.2 is less, so C1. 0.6 is less, so C1. This is 1.4, so it will again go to C2. So now the cluster assignment remains the same. The old cluster, also the first 4 patients were there in the cluster 1, and the next 5 patients were there in the cluster 2. Similar pattern was there after the new centroid. So now once it gets fixed, the software stops. So for you people, for demonstration, we have shown it up till 3 iteration. But the software does this in many iteration, and it does until these cluster assignment become fixed. Okay, and then there are no data point that changes cluster, and then it says that algorithm is converged. So this is like basically the k-mean cluster. Now that we have shown it with only one variable, like only fasting plasma glucose. Now if I add one more variable, so let's say I am using the fasting plasma glucose and triglyceride, and I have decided to put these into the 3 clusters based on cardiometabolic profile. So how I will go? So here this fasting, so if you can recall with the previous example, there were only fasting glucose, only one variable. So there was only one column. But here you can see there are 2 columns, column 1 and column 2. So now how to decide for the centroid? So you have got 2 dimension. One dimension is X and the other dimension is Y. I mean, not the dimension, 2 values. So what you do, first centroid you take at A1, The second centroid, this is hypothetical. For example, I am telling you. The second you take as B1 and the third you take as C1. So these are the values. X is 5 and Y is 1.1. Then again B1 is 7.8 X and then 2.4 and C1 is 6.2 and 1.6. Now how to calculate the distance? When you have got two variables and one variable is X and the other variable is Y, the formula for Euclidean distance is this one. So what you do? X1 minus X2 square plus Y1 minus Y2 or Y2 minus Y1 square under root. If there are 2 points, the Euclidean distance is calculated like this. So for one example, if I have to find out the distance between the 2, 3 with the point 5, 7, how will I do it? So 5 minus 2 square plus 7 minus 3 square, and then this is your 3 square and this is your 4 square. And if you take under root, so Euclidean distance between these 2 points will be 5. This is the way to calculate the distance if there are 2 data points, 2 variables. Am I making sense to all of you up till this point? So we started with K-mean demonstration using one variable. That was fasting plasma glucose. And then we have seen that the distance between those two, since there was only one variable, so it was the absolute value of those two data point. But if you have got two variable, then how do we calculate the distance? So it is x1 minus x2 and y1 minus y2 square, and then you take the under root. Again, this you don't have to do it. The software does it. But just for demonstration and what is happening in the background, we are telling this to you. For example, now if you have to calculate this distance from D to M1 and distance from, so these three were the centroid. So if I have to calculate for this, this will be 0. But if I have to calculate for this, how will I do it? 7 minus 8, 7.8 minus 5 ka square plus 2.4 minus 1.1 ka square under root. So for example, we have calculated the distance. Now you have to see the minimum. So which is minimum? Since this is centroid for first, so it will go in cluster 1. If you see this, which is minimum 0.28 or 2.82 or 1.04. So this A2 patient will go in which cluster? Yes, all of you please write in the chat box. True. It will go in C1 because 0.28 is minimal. Coming to A3, it will go in which cluster? Again C1. But if you see these, this is again, this is minimal, 0, because we have taken this as a centroid. So this will go in the C2. In B2, if you see, 0.45 is minimal. So it will go into C2. Again, if you see the B3, it is 2.73, 0.36 and 1.43. So 0.36 is minimal. So it will go into C2. And if you see the last one, since this was the centroid, this will go in C3. And this is the least, 0.22. This will go into the C3. So you have got 3 clusters. First cluster is of A1, A2 and A3. The second cluster is of 3 patients, B1, B2 and B3. And third is C1 and C2. Now again, what you do? This is first iteration. Again, the way it was done in the previous example, a new centroid is calculated. So a new centroid will be mean of A1, A2 and A3. So you will calculate mean of X1 and mean of X2. So 5, 5.2 and 5.6. This mean is calculated, and Y1. That means 1.1, 1.3 and 1. This is calculated. Similarly, you calculate the mean of all the 3 centroid for X and Y, and then you will again then take these coordinates. So again in the second iteration, these coordinates will be taken and you will calculate the distances. Again, you can see here that it did not change the cluster. Okay. So you like software stops at this point, and this says that when there is no change in the cluster membership, that means the algorithm it has converged. And now that's the final cluster structure. So this is the way the k-mean clustering is done. Okay, Dr. Shamshad is asking to give 5 minutes break. Set. For this, you need to download Snow Cluster module. I'll go with the question also. You can see this Snow cluster, this one, this Snow cluster. So go this here plus, and then go to Jamovi library and type cluster or type Snow. And this Snow cluster will come. So download this. You can see here it's writing this module allows us to analyze k-mean and hierarchical clustering, time series and many other, but we today we will learn k-mean and hierarchical. So you have to download this since it is already installed in my PC, that's why it is writing here installed. After you download this, so I'll first go to the question. So we have shared this, or we will share. We have not shared, we will share. The data we shared. So this article we have shown, but again I'll show this article. This was the article. Cluster analysis, a new approach for identification of underlying risk factor for coronary artery disease in essential hypertensive patients. And if you see this article, I'll just go through and rush. Will show you some few methods. This is the heat map which they have given. This is the 4 cluster. This is the phenotype 2-dimensional presentation of the cluster analysis. And you can see the 4 different cluster. Then if you come down, this is they have given the descriptive statistics and the test of hypothesis also. So this the 4 cluster, they have seen the mean of age and carotid plaque and other thing like smoking, CAD, everything. And then you can see here. After this, they have used this logistic regression and all, which is not the purpose of this workshop. So if you see the analysis, statistical analysis. So they have applied cluster analysis. This you can see they have applied cluster analysis to explore the possible subgroups within a well-characterized population of hypertensive patients who had circadian blood pressure monitoring and carotid ultrasound examination. And this study would help us to identify potential risk factor. And here in Nature, they write methodology afterwards, like after the result. So if you see the result methods, they have written here all the methods. Cluster analysis, you can see here. They have used like a Vika machine learning toolkit for cluster analysis. And they have used like k-mean, one of the widely adopted clustering algorithm was carried out to find the structure and divide the pattern. And then they have done the principal component analysis, mapping high dimensional into low dimensional space to reduce the dimension space, and add as it is necessary for cluster analysis. They have done the like missing values analysis also, and the same this thing they have repeated. The main steps in k-mean algorithm are as follows. So if you see, they have just written select initial cluster with the number of k, then repeat steps 2 and 3 until cluster membership stabilizes. So this you have just seen. I mean, this is done in the background. And then assign each point to its closest cluster center. Compute new cluster center. In step 1, K points are selected randomly as initial cluster centers. In step 2, then we assign each point to its closest center. They have just written the methods which is adopted in the background. So you can write this also, but even if you just write the agglomerative cluster with the method which we adopt, hierarchical clustering, that is okay. So they have, again, this was the inclusion and exclusion criteria. And then this is the normal descriptive, this thing like ANOVA and all those normality testing, this they have done. Now coming back to the question, so they have, in this article, we have used various factors like demographic factors, behavioral risk factor like smoking and exercise, biochemical parameters like triglyceride, blood sugar, and blood pressure patterns. And then you can see the cluster analysis, some theories being written here. We are like without labeling the data as a high risk or low risk, which we have known this term as, which term we have known? Unsupervised. So this is a unsupervised analysis. So by the end of this workshop, you should be able to understand why this cluster analysis is used in the clinical and epidemiological research. And we have to distinguish between the hierarchical and the K-mean. That we'll see on the data. And then perform cluster analysis in GEM movie, the interpret dendrogram, and PCA visualization. Okay, so this is the data set. I'll go to the data set first. This is the data set and you can see variables. So if you come to variables, these are the variables. The age, just check, because if the nature of variable, while importing it from Excel, you can see all the variables are in continuous. So we will again relabel these variables. So I'll start with age, edit, age is continuous. Then comes your CPG. This is the carotid plaque grading. This is again, okay. If you see this, this is ordinal. So you can see here, right, no. In case of this thing, it is mild. This labeling is not there. And then severe. Uh, then we'll go to the gender. Gender is again nominal. So 0 is female. 1 is male. Smoking is again present, absent. So it is absent or no smoking and present. Diabetes again. You can copy also. I think I should have selected and then again. Okay. Present, absent. And then cerebral infarction. This is again nominal or ordinal. It is absent. This is present. And then this is triglyceride, which is continuous. The total cholesterol, VLDL, continuous. The HDL, fasting blood sugar, systolic blood pressure, 24-hour diastolic blood pressure, and then daytime, nighttime, circadian BP pattern. This is also ordinal. Dipper, non-dipper, and 0 is dipper, non-dipper. Okay, spelling. Reverse, CAD absent. Again, CAD. So this is like CAD absent present, but again I said that it is unsupervised. So we will not move this CAD absent present in the data set. So this we have modified the variables. Now we'll come to analysis. So in analysis, this no, if you see this, I'll delete this. What? Now come to this snow cluster option. Click this snow cluster and you can see in the cluster analysis there are three options. K-mean clustering, hierarchical clustering and time series clustering. So we will see these two, K-mean clustering and hierarchical clustering. In the cluster plot, you will see there is again one option, that is the clustering dendrogram. We will see this later. Currently, what we have learned, that to decide the number of clusters, you should do the hierarchical clustering. So I will click on this hierarchical clustering. In hierarchical clustering, then in this case, if you move the continuous data, it doesn't take the categorical variable. Like the Jamovi, there are ways, if you have got mixed variable, you can do it in SPSS and R. But in Jamovi, it strictly takes only the category continuous data. So what we will do, we will move all the continuous variable here. So age, triglyceride, total cholesterol, VLDL, LDL, HDL, fasting plasma glucose, then systolic blood pressure, nighttime SBP, and the circadian rhythm I am not taking again. This will not take at all. So all these variables I have taken. Now here if you see, I have used this option of standardized data. Why I have used this option? Because this is by default and you should use this because the units of all these variables are different. If you see the HDL, LDL, age, and if you see the blood pressure, all units are different. So to keep all these variables under one roof, you should standardize these variables. Otherwise, it will be difficult to measure the distance. So that's why option of standardized data, that will always be there. And then the two options which we have learned, the what will be the distance, how it will be decided. So like I said, Euclidean distance and clustering method, the most common is what, D2. And number of clusters, right now it is 2, but again you can give any number of, this is decided only by default it writes 2. But even if you go by, right now don't do that and we'll just see the dendrogram. So if you are deciding it on the number of basis of cluster, it is showing here that two clusters, the one cluster is of 152 members and the next is 48. So now if you go and let's say if I keep 4 clusters and then see. So now it is more of a even. In first cluster having 51 members, second 48, third 45 and fourth 56. And then you can plot this dendrogram. So if you plot this dendrogram, you can see this is the dendrogram. So this is like compact. You can increase its height and width. So if I make this to let's say 700 and height also to 700. This will be like this. So it is now better seen, but again in one view you cannot. So this is the 4 cluster. And then now like we have just learned how to decide the number of clusters here, because it will appear depending on how many clusters you give. If I write here 3 clusters, this dendrogram will not change, but it will show you at what distance this 3 cluster is coming. So you can see it is merging this as one cluster, this as one cluster, and these two as one cluster. if you write here as 3. So now how to decide? So basically the rough guideline is you can see the height. So if the height is, you should choose a distance between 10 to 20. Here it is 10 and here it is 20. So the height is more here. It is probably more than 20. So that's why if you keep the cluster at 4, and this is also decided by clinical judgment. Like I said, that your clinical judgment, if you see the dendrogram and if you decide, so what, I will go by these 4 clusters. And again, why we are taking it deliberately here, because author has also suggested 4. But again, that you can decide by seeing the dendrogram at what level you want a cut. Generally, it is said that wherever there is a steep increase in the number, so if you see this height, this 20, 22, the 3 cluster will be there. But again, if you see any point up till your 12, you will see there are 4 clusters. If I change the height, let's say, if I write here height on the basis of height, and if I write 25, so now it will show you only 2 clusters. You can see 1 cluster this and 1 cluster this. But this will be very, big. And we have seen initially, when you put 2 clusters, the arm were very uneven. One person was of 1 cluster of having 152 patients, and the next were 48. Now, if I,
So, ma'am, if you put 6, ma'am, then
6
6
cluster
cluster.
or 6 distance? Okay, 6. No, no. Dr. Ravi, are you asking me to put height as 6 or cluster
No,
as
no, no.
6?
By number of clusters is 6.
Okay, so if you put 6, then you can see the descriptive. If you see the number of elements like 36, 31, 56, 17 and 15. You can put like this, and then if you see the dendrogram, it is showing these clusters. So again, it is between 10 to 20. So you can choose a 6 clusters also.
So we put
See,
5, ma'am.
yeah, 5 you can put. Again, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So you mean to
Height.
say the width of the cluster should be uniform, so it's going to be a hit and trial basis of deciding it.
Oh, actually, like I said, generally it is said that you should not have many clusters. Why? Because why you are doing this clustering? You want to reduce the uh, interpretability for the clinical decision making. So if you have many clusters, it will be difficult to label those clusters also based on some characteristics. So generally you see that cluster size in various papers, uh, generally we have seen that it is ranging from 3 to 6, not too many clusters, right? And visually, like we have looked for the ways how to decide for cluster. So where there is a clear cut, because again you confirm these in the k-mean clustering. This is just one way of doing it. There's another way also which we will show you in the that's the elbow method. Just
Okay.
wait for that particular point. But even if you are using this dendrogram, and if you see the clear cut separation, these 5 clusters, 4 clusters, every if you make this, you can see that there is a little bit of these 2 clusters are very big, and this cluster is very small, the first one. So this is a kind of slight uneven cluster. But if you make it 4, and then then you can see it is kind of like more of a symmetrical. And if you make it like, let's say 3, then again you can see that one is a very big cluster and the other 2 are almost of
Hmm.
same, you can see number. But again, the length, like distance, if you see, like I said, generally it is said that the distance, the height of the clusters is basically the, uh, you know, it's the taking the height of the cluster, it decides at what point you want a cut. So 10
Okay.
to 20 generally it is said. So with 3 clusters, it is going like more than 20. So that's why if you keep, let's say 5 was also okay, because at because with 5 again your height is like in between 10 to 20. This is one way of deciding on cluster. But if you ask from me, I will say that this is like one cluster, but again this is a little asymmetry. So for
Mm.
4, if you see, more of symmetry is there in the clusters, right?
Oh,
So even if when
okay.
you will do, because then you have to do the ANOVA, you will see that uh, we perform all those descriptive statistics based on these clusters, and we describe these clusters. So that's why for cluster solution, again, deciding for the number of cluster, there's one more way, and that is if you go to this snow cluster, this is a simple dendrogram. Now if I go to this cluster dendrogram, okay, variable clustering. Okay, so now if you can see here I have used this individual data point. But if one of your objective is to uh, clustering the variables also, then you click on this cluster variable, and then you can see there's a variable wise clustering you can see. So all these SBP, years, and if it is a 4 cluster, so all these blood pressure and age, that comes in one cluster. This HDL comes in one cluster, HDL and total cholesterol in one cluster, and triglyceride, VLDL, and fasting plasma glucose as one cluster. So this, I think this sort of something was done with that SLE patients. There they did this clinical profile wise, and then they have correlated with the symptoms. So why they did that, like if it is very much correlating, then they don't need to perform all those 18 types of uh, you know uh, testing, this thing. So they can individualize that. If patient symptomatology is that, like patient profiling, what we say, if patient symptom is this, you can go for this particular batch of testing, only the SBP and all. For example, I'm saying you are not going to do that here, but based on this variable clustering also, you can decide. Now coming to another option in this only, this is the clustering dendrogram. So when you click that clustering dendrogram also, here you move all those variables, press shift control, and then moved all these variables. And here also I am using the cluster dendrogram, number of clusters. Let's say if I put 4, Euclidean distance, what D2, cluster I want vertical is by default. If you want horizontal, then you have to click. And you can save the cluster number also here. That is there in the k-mean also. So here the cluster which you see, that's more of a colorful. You can see one color is green, same is there which we have seen earlier. But you can just see the 4. क्या change कर सकते हैं? Okay, Dr. Shamshad is saying change of type. Okay, तो वो तो फिर यहाँ से है ना. From here you can change, like many times you will see that phylogenetic was very difficult to interpret. If you make it circular, here from the type of plot it is like this. So then the cluster is, you can see here. But this is not the classical way you see that rectangle is there. And if you make this is will be like tree like phylogenetic. So it will be something like this. This gray is one, then the blue. But here in this case, you can see the individual cases, numbers that is seen clearly in case of phylogenetic. But our eyes,
But
like
we
generally,
cannot have the variable in this.
yeah. So if you see variables, so in this they don't. You have to put it like separately. Here in this thing, it doesn't come the variable wise. That is there in the other option. In
Okay.
this clustering dendrogram, the variable is not there. You can just see the height and the type 4 cluster solution. So now
Okay.
this is only, like I said, this you do just to see how many clusters you have to put it in the when you go for the k-mean clustering. Right. Is this okay up till this point? So you can practice this, and how many people are there in the? So Rajat, are you there? Because we have to assign breakout room to each one of you. So we are back to the main room. So any difficulties or anything which you want me to explain in the hierarchical clustering, the agglomerative type? No, then we should go to the next type of clustering method, which is one of the partitioning clustering method, which is the k-mean. So option is same. You have to click on this no cluster, go to this k-mean clustering. In this k-mean, you will see that in case of dendrogram, you cannot move the categorical variable. But in case of a k-mean, you have got both these two options. You can move these continuous variable also, and you can move this categorical variable also. So you initially we'll see what happens with this. Of course, the cluster assignment changes if you move categorical variable also. So it is up to you. Ideally, it is said that this k-mean also it should be done for the category for the continuous variable, not for the categorical variable, because for the mixed type of variable there are other methods like Goward distance and all that we calculate, because Euclidean distance is calculated. Euclidean distance is calculated if that because 0 1 it doesn't tell that, it will take it as numeric. So that's why you can choose only moving only the continuous variable under this section. Although they have given these two windows, I mean both the covariate and lower down, if you see, they have given you the Gowers distance also. But this is not functional now. We tried, but probably in the coming time, maybe they will add this Gowers distance, and then we can use this factor also. So for currently, I'm using this only the continuous variable, that the way we did with the hierarchical. So I'll select, press shift, and we'll come to this, move these variables, and because we have used this cluster size as 4, we will use standardized variable, and we have learnt why we are using standardized variable, because the units of all these variables are different. So that's why we are changing this to z-score. And the algorithm method is the Hartigan-Wong. That's the most commonly, which is by default, and we should use this method only. So this is first is the sum of square tables. It tells you the sum of square. We all know what is a sum of square. That's the variance. And then we will see the cluster number. This you have to save. Why you have to save this? Because if you go and see the data, it assigns the clustering. Like the first patient, it is in third cluster, the second is in fourth cluster, and so on. Because we need this cluster number for the ANOVA and for chi-square statistics also. So this is the count of the clusters. You can see 52 in the first cluster, 43 in the second, 58 in the third, and 47 in the fourth cluster. And this is the centroid of cluster table. Means this shows you how much less or more is the Z from the uh, centroid. So this tells you like 0.66 or 0.60 less or zero point 0.7 more. But generally we don't use this table. Here also, if you see k-mean, we basically use k-mean to label the cluster. in the individual participant, but K mean it is working on Z value under the background, this standardized variable which we have learned, and distance is calculated based on that, not on the individual value. That X and Y which we learnt now, the Euclidean distance, it is not calculated based on the raw value, rather it is calculated based on the standardized value. So if you see the plots, this is your cluster plot, and if I make this cluster plot, you can see this is in the two-dimensional. This is dimension 1 and this is dimension 2. So in dimension 1 you can see these cluster 1 and cluster 3, and in dimension 2 you can see the cluster 2 and cluster 4, and this tells you the variance. So total of this 4 cluster solution, this explains the variance of 36.5 plus 22, approximately 59% of the variance, and that's a good variance explanation. And then if you click on this scree plot, like I was telling you how you can decide the number of, the way we used to do it in the, if those of you who have attended the scale development workshop, there also we use this scree plot and PCA. So the scree plot, it again tells you how many there we used to decide on the number of factor. And here also it is also one way to decide on the number of clusters. So you can see like up till where is the elbow, but again it is, like I said, a subjective. You can think like I will take 2, someone can take 3, I took 4, because after 4 you can see there is almost like very less angle is there. But again you can, you can decide on the number of cluster, but again from the review of literature also, if you are finding that 3 cluster or 4 cluster, that you can see on the basis of dendrogram which we have decided, seeing the length, and where you get a clear cut solution where the cluster you are finding it a bit symmetrical. That's how we decide. But again, like Dr. Ravi asked, like what are the other ways? So this scree plot is again one way. And you can also see this PCA in the 2 dimension. You can see it is a clear cut. If you like reduce number also, let's say if I put it as 3, then also you can see 3 is also, it is explaining this variance will be the same 659%. And again you can see this 3, then again elbow, you can see whether you should take 3 or 4 again. So you can decide, but again like we have decided in the previous one, the 4, and the paper also mentions 4. So we have moved from to with the 4 this thing. Now once you have assigned the cluster number, you come to the data, and these are the cluster numbers. So now you have to perform the describe the clusters in cluster 1, 2 and 3. What are the traits, how the what are the characteristics of these variables based on which you can describe the phenotype of the cluster. So how you will do that? And if you wish to do the significance testing, hypothesis testing, then you can use the test of hypothesis also. So after this clustering, so basically this K-mean helps us to label each individual into one cluster, and then you can go to the analysis, go to the ANOVA, one-way ANOVA, and then you can move this grouping variable, that is the clustering, into this grouping variable, and all continuous variable into this, because the groups are 4 clusters. So I will move this with the ANOVA. You can use this independent variable, the descriptive table, homogeneity test, and the QQ plot. And then you can see it takes some time. It gives you the one-way ANOVA, the significance level. You can see there was a difference. All the 4 group there was a clear-cut statistical this thing. That's why all the 4 clusters, the variables are significantly different. Mean also you can see if you see the descriptive table. Just a second. This is the mean. So this is the triglyceride. The mean is 1.18 with the standard error is 1.172 and 1.48. Similarly, the total cholesterol, VLDL, LDL, all these categorical continuous variable you can see. An assumption check also similarly the way we have learnt, if you see the p-value, all the p-value is more than 0.05. So we will go with this Levine's, this is your Levine's test of homogeneity. So if there is a homogeneity, you will assume it is homogeneous. So variances, you will click that Fisher. You don't go with the Welch. Because homogeneity, Levine's test of homogeneity, it is met. A normality you can also check with the QQ plot. So you can see the data is normal. I mean, the data in these clusters. Now we are doing the analysis cluster wise. So this is one way for the continuous variable. For the categorical variable, you will go with the frequency and the chi-square test of association. So you move this cluster into the column because that is your independent variable, sorry, rows, and your dependent variable into the column. So let's say I may start with the gender, move this to gender, go to statistics, test all that, chi-square, see the cells, in cells check for the expected count also because we need to see each cell. The expected count is more than 5 in all these cells. Then I will uncheck that percentage row and then you see. So chi-square is not significant. If you see the male and female 44, 55. Here in cell 2 you can see like 74% and 25 gender difference. But overall this is not significant. Again, you can check for the other variables also similarly. Like for smoking you can see. And if you wish to see, give only percentages because you wish to measure the, in the descriptive table you have to write the percentage also, like how many of smokers and non-smoker. So I will just go down. So you can see here again 6732. This you can give like in all clusters 1, 2 and 3 and 4. So if you see the table, this was the statistical analysis. If I go up, this was the original table, I mean original article. So they have given heat map also. We, if time permits, this is the 4, you can see the 2-dimensional presentation of the cluster analysis, the way we have done here. This one. This is very similar to what you can see here. This one. Right. And then comes your, in this only if you see the table, result. So this is the way you can see. They have written like cluster 1, 2, 3 and 4. And then they have given like p-value by ANOVA, carotid plaque thickness like normal or narrowing or more than 25%. It's just the descriptive. They have not performed the test of association on descriptive, this 2 by 2. Here also you can see gender, male and female. Okay, this they have performed like male percentage. This is significant. Smoking, diabetes, they have performed here. And then if you see all these mean and SD. And this is the test of significance. And they have written also categorical variables are presented as count and percentages and mean CADL, these all they have written. So this is, you can do this via ANOVA because this is a more than 2 group. And then if you only need to give percentages like frequency and all, you can go with the exploration descriptive. Again, if you see in many paper, they make out for outlier analysis, they make box plot. If you go through the other articles, I have not, like this was regarding the diabetes, which I have shown you in the beginning. Here you can see with the 5 this thing, like they have given the 5 cluster. So they have plotted all the variables. They have only taken 5 variables: hemoglobin, BMI, age, this something insulin, something there was one variable, and these 5 variables. So they have plotted the box plot also. So same way you can also do. You can split it by the clustering, and you can take any of the continuous variable just to see for the outlier, and you can check. I'm showing you with few. You can go to the plot and you can plot this box plot. So this is the box plot across cluster. Now we are using cluster as a grouping variable, and then using this to define the our data set in each of these cluster, and to show about the mean and about the cluster this outlier. So this you can do, like you can see in this paper, this one. In this case there were many outlier, but in our case, since it is a like data means created data. So in this section only you use the scree plot and cluster plot. Again, I think Dr. Devjani asked for variable PCA. If you wish to see the variable PCA, it will show you in the less dimension, only in 3 dimension, and you can see. But for that you need to enlarge the oh no, he's not here. No, ऊपर होगा ना वो. Yeah, variable PCA. So if you enlarge this, because right now you can see all the it is overlapped, so we are not able to see. So if you make it, let's say 700, so then you can see this since in this case the number of variables are more, you can reduce also. You can see triglyceride, the VLDL, fasting plasma glucose, that is these 3 in one direction, and then these HDL as single, VLDL and fasting as gray, and triglyceride also as gray, and this all as orange. So probably if you have less number of variable, let's say, let's move this back. If I only take 24-hour, just to see, like, then you can see like it is more clear now. Right, so this is the way we do the k-mean. After k-mean, you have to do the ANOVA and one-way ANOVA, and if needed, you have to check with the chi-square test of association. अच्छा फिर से कर दूँ. Okay. So I'll move all these variables back here. Okay, अभी the interpretation कहाँ बताया, वो भी नहीं बताया. So like how you go, I'll delete this analysis. Go to snow cluster, click on k-mean. In the k-mean, we have decided with the dendrogram that we will go with the 4 cluster. And so that's why we are going with the 4 cluster. Move these variables, the continuous variable. Select these variables. And I have moved these under the section of covariate. The preferred way will be Hartigan-Wong. You save the cluster number. Click on the standardized variable, because I said that every unit of measurement of all these variables are different. you have to see the two things, scree plot and the cluster plot. The scree plot, you can again confirm your number of clusters, and this is your cluster plot. Assign this cluster number, that is very important, the most important thing, which will be visible in your data individually, which is assigned to which cluster. And then you can perform the descriptive or the analysis test of hypothesis using the ANOVA, one-way ANOVA. You can move the grouping variable under the clustering to this grouping variable, and all the continuous variable here under the dependent variable. Click on the descriptive table, see whether homogeneity of variance is met or not, p-value and the QQ plot, and then wait for some time. So this is your p-value for the Welch. But Welch, we don't know whether we have to take Welch or not. So first check with the assumption. Assumption, if you see the p-value, all the p-values are more than 0.05. That means homogeneity of variance is met. So I will click on this assume equal variance, that is the Fisher's. And then we'll see the ANOVA. So ANOVA, the p-value is significant. And this is the descriptive. You have to you have to make this like row and column different, because here if you see cluster is 1 2 3 4 like this, but if you see the table, cluster is in the row, here it is in column. So you have to use the, I mean, some tool, maybe any AI tool, or you can use Excel also, transpose rows and column. And then similarly for categorical variable, you have to use this frequency, chi-square test of association. And I will show you the interpretation and how we have done it. So this, we have pasted the dendrogram, that colorful one, and we have written the interpretation. So cluster count was 4. So dendrogram suggested a 4 cluster solution, and we have just described the number in each cluster. And elbow plot also showed a marked reduction within cluster variability up till 4 clusters. Then this was a centroid. Ideally, this is not needed. We have just pasted it, but we have never seen any manuscript reporting this table. So I think let's delete this table. Okay. Then this is your cluster plot, good separation and total variance. And if you come down, this is your like main table. The mean of age, triglyceride, total cholesterol and all, which this one. This you have to make like this. Cluster 1 with mean SD, all number, and its p-value like this. This one. And then its write-up will be, it's not Welch, it should be Fisher's, because homogeneity of variance was met. So Fisher one-way ANOVA. So you can define cluster 1 as a low moderate risk, younger, severe and old, seeing the age and all. And then the description of all these clusters, right? And this is the categorical variable which I said, like male, female and their percentages. You can see the p-value and then you can define that. That's it. So Jyotika has written something, k-mean, any in the chat box. It was mentioned that k-mean required pre-specifying. Then why R did specify the number? Okay. Actually, you can decide for the distance also. There is another way. You are right. In hierarchical, it is exploratory. Actually, even if you don't say, see, if I put that in hierarchical, you don't go, if you don't go by number of cluster, go by the height. And let's say, I will put it as, पांच रखना है ना. Which Dr. Ravi asked me to do? 5. Okay, okay. No, K must be between 2 and 12. नहीं कुछ गड़बड़ किया क्या? Let me check. नहीं ले नहीं रहा है ना हायरार्किकल क्लस्टरिंग में, और 10 से ज्यादा में
क्लस्टर
नहीं, नंबर ऑफ क्लस्टर ये 4 कैसे आ रहा है यहाँ पे? So you can decide on the basis of height also. So it will give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, एक सेकेंड, हाँ, wait, ये हटा देना.
5 कीजिए वहां पर.
हाँ, that was because of variable which Dr. Devjani asked. So now यहाँ पे 5 करेंगे. So if you decide by the height, it will be these many clusters. Up, you can see 35 clusters. This is the cluster. If you can keep on increasing the height. So on the basis of height, that's what we said, that in 10 to 20, here you can see the number of clusters is 12. Now make it to 10. If I keep height as 10, it is the 8 cluster. But again you see, still it is, although symmetrical is there, but still you can see this is very small. And then I said, like, if you can keep it between 10 to 20. So if you keep like this, then height is, like, you can see 4. Right, Jyotika? So yeah, you are right that why we put 4. You can decide by the height also. And there also, even if you kept it as 4, if you keep this as 4, then also you can keep on changing the number of cluster. We put 4 here only for demonstration because 4 was symmetrical. You can put 3 and then see the symmetry. Then again you can, and that's again, I said that it is exploratory. You recheck this and in the k-mean. So k-mean, you see that it was grouped and it was significant. So there are ways to decide, like in the paper which I think we shared, they have not decided the number of clusters based on dendrogram. There was some other ways. So there are other ways also to decide the number of clusters, but for beginning, those are a little mathematical, and that package is not there in the GEMOV. So that's why here we cannot decide. If you see this, they have decided the number of clusters based on some other statistics. I'll show you.
Weka machine learning toolkit.
And then that is the tool. I'm just seeing how they have done it. Here too they have written the same thing, which, like principal component analysis, 2-dimensional space, which we just discussed. And k-mean, they have not used hierarchical. They just selected. If इसमें शायद डायबिटीज वाले पेपर में था वो रिपोर्ट.
ऊपर
ऊपर जाए. हाँ, ये देखो ना यहाँ पे. Second step hierarchical SPSS for 2 to 15 cluster using log likelihood. See, they have used this 2 to 15 cluster using log likelihood as the distance measure and Short's Bayesian criterion for clustering. So 2 to 15 cluster, that means they have checked starting from 2 to 15 and then they have decided for 5. इसमें 5 किया है, डायबिटीज वाले में 5 किया है. हाँ देखो ना 5 क्लस्टर है, वो CAD वाले में 4 था. Right, so again I said that number of cluster, we tried looking for a very objective answer for this question, but again it is not a very clear cut answer. There are 3-4 ways: clinical experience, review of literature, and then seeing the solution using the PC, that's Cree plot, and height, reference height of 10 to 20. These were only the points which we could look up in GEMOV. Probably till now we have explored that. We may see more of this in future, but currently this much we explored. Jyotika.
Ma'am, there was a finding in the study. Cluster 4 has the least likely to have severe carotid narrowing, almost 3.15%. Whereas the
So in that,
maximum CAD is there in this. Even the level of cholesterol was the lowest and the level of HDL was the highest. All this is all paradoxical to the normal literature what we have. I'm just below table 1 if you go, just below
you
table
are
1.
asking with the original this original research paper.
Yes, yes. Go to cluster 4, ma'am, please. If you see n is equal to 127. It's
Yeah.
an entire paradoxical statement to what we know as far as literature is concerned. So
Okay.
how come
Actually,
they have then come down to how come they've grouped this cluster 4 together? I mean, the software has done it, of course, but then can you just
actually
read this
we
cluster 4
we
finding? Yes, ma'am,
concern.
just below this, below this,
Okay. Cluster.
where the descriptors of yeah, go below this, yeah, go to cluster 4, ma'am, please.
Okay. It is least likely to have the severe carotid
Ah.
narrowing. Importantly, all of the hypertensive patients in this cluster also had CAD, while patients in other 3 had no CAD. The levels of total cholesterol was the lowest and the level of HDL was highest. In addition, cluster 4 had the most patients with the reverse dipper pattern and the rate of decline for both SBP. This was there, probably they must have explained that. Have you gone through the discussion?
I have, ma'am. I have gone. They have commented upon the fact of the presence of the PC CPG. Wait a sec now. Basically, carotid plaque thickness measurement. They have told about that intima media thickening could have been more done in a better manner in the entire surface area to be, taken more into account, so that would have given a better answer. That they have explained, ma'am.
Okay,
That they
so
have
maybe
explained.
actually we have not gone, we like focused more on the process rather
Okay,
than
okay.
like we have not.
I was wondering, based on this, they have made a cluster wherein they have found out this particular finding, which is quite contrary to the existing literature. Secondly, even if you go to the diabetics and the smoke, cluster 2 is explainable.
Okay,
The
which is,
cluster 1 had maximum number of smokers, I think, and
let me
still
go.
they have no had any finding of any CAD in that. Cluster 3 is explainable, ma'am, scientifically. 1 and 4, I was a bit intrigued. So I thought, let me discuss this part also.
Okay, probably I am not the right person for this because actually,
And ma'am, if you notice, ma'am, go to the figure 2, ma'am, the carotid
okay,
plaque and smoking, they are found to be lesser OR, which means it's a protective mechanism for occurring a CAD, ma'am.
this one, no?
हाँ, ma'am.
Carotid
Yeah,
plaque and the
yeah,
smoking.
yeah.
So this was
Even the cholesterol, of course, cholesterol 1 is included, so that is discounted, but these two were interesting
this no,
findings
this
what
is
they
the
have found.
overall. This is not
Yeah.
cluster wise. Like this was
No, no,
overall.
no, no, I know. So that's what, ma'am. I'm talking about overall only, ma'am.
Why smoking is protective?
which is normally quite contrary to the existing literature. Male pattern, yes, understood. BP understood. HDL, of course, borderline one is, yeah, surprisingly, even HDL is contributing to it. That is also very,
Yeah,
not
but
in the.
that's the, I mean, it has been published in Nature, and that too not very, if you see, recent, 16, 17, probably 10 years back. But you can't say like then probably this may be the preliminary finding for a new research. Why it happened in their population? Actually,
That
I
is what
cannot
is the very
comment.
interesting thing, man. And secondly,
Yeah,
they have ruled out people who were on antihypertensive drugs, which
yeah.
means, I mean, ethically, they have waited for that long for them to have some amount of problem to crop up. That also they have mentioned in
Oh,
the exclusion criteria if you go down.
okay. So probably actually then I think we will be delayed for our breakout room activity.
Ma'am, no, no, no. Ma'am, this is just my this thing, ma'am.
Okay,
Ma'am,
okay,
please
okay,
carry on with
okay.
the breakout room, ma'am. They're just
Actually,
findings.
you
That's
are
about all,
right.
ma'am.
You are right. I got your point, but since it is
No, no, these are
entirely,
just
uh,
observations. They have got nothing
yeah,
to do with the
evidence.
statistics.
No, no, no. It's a evidence-based medicine. So you are talking more now from the point of view of like using this as a your practice whenever you will practice or something like that. So probably that's another issue when we see the methodological flaws and we critically analyze the article, right? So that's great that you are using, so many now. I think you are fully equipped to handle
No, ma'am.
any of
I
the.
always read up whenever you come up, ma'am. Otherwise, I hardly read. You are actually
No,
the
that's
impetus for me to read.
no, that's good,
Thank
and
you.
it's nice to see. So Rajat, are you there? We will put you in one of the breakout room. The interpretation file data set we have shared.
Ma'am, I had a doubt regarding the PCA analysis.
Yes, Dr. Anuradha. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. I had a doubt regarding the PCA analysis plot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Could you please describe once
Yeah,
more?
sure. This one you are saying.
No, the PCA.
Okay, so PCA is like a variable PCA you are saying, this one. Like here, if you see, it is there in the K-mean, na? So K-mean, if you see, it is a scree plot and variable PCA. So you want to discuss this variable PCA, this one.
The other one, no, with like curves and all, one axis, X and Y axis, and
Yes, ma'am. During the breakout room, Dr. Anuradha had doubt with the variables PCA plot.
Okay, what was the doubt? This is here. Yeah,
ma'am,
this one, na?
yeah, could you please describe that plot itself once again?
This is actually this wants to this has clubbed the variable into two dimension. So you can see here that these clusters, although I said that this is since the number of variables I will reduce and then probably we can see more. Suppose I am plotting this with this is more of like if there are only three variables, and then if I go for this variable PCA, why it is not appearing? Okay, three variable, how it will. That's why you will see many times people don't give this graph. Why? Because with less number of variable, yeah, now you can see. So this, it clubs this as one group, only the age. The second cluster, if you see, because since you have given four clusters, so the one blue is for the age, second is your gray one, this two is your total this thing, triglyceride. And then this fourth is green one. So if you see again, this is superimposed, not very clearly seen, and then your two oranges are the VLDL and triglyceride. So it is like basically it clubs the variables and shows that under two dimension. But again, like I said, this it reduce all these variables. So variable PCA means like if you see the principal component, it is the one of the method of dimensionality reduction. So it reduces since there are many variables. So ideally these variables in a multi-dimensional space. But if you reduce this in under the 2 dimension, and if you are making 3 clusters, so you can 4 clusters, so you can see these are the solutions which it gives. Like, but again, if they have many, then it is superimposed on one on the other. So this is like XY axis. If you see, it goes, and if you see the age, it was like in minus. If you can recall that centroid. So if you see XY, this is positive coordinate. This is positive X but negative Y, because you can see 0 is here. This is your 0, this is your negative, and this is your positive. And this is under the in the Z score, this thing. If you see 0 to 1 here, and this is also 0, this is minus, and this is 1. So these variables under the standardized, you can see here it is a standardized variables. So it gives you the plot under which whether it is in the positive X and positive Y or positive X negative Y. This just shows that, and then the clubbing of these variables. So these three are in 3 different yes, coordinate.
Ma'am, does it have any significance regarding the next step of the analysis?
No,
Any
no.
criteria? No. And
In this
what?
case, generally variables, we go with the patient's cluster. If you see, generally we don't analyze these variables as in this section in hierarchical and K mean. Generally, the type of results which we have seen, it is basically after assessing the individual patient, assigning the individual patient as a cluster, then they describe that cluster. So we have, I mean, not seen this variable PCA separately in the articles which we have downloaded. But of course, probably what I think it is more of a use in the machine learning, because this cluster analysis, all those machine learning, it's more useful. Uh, we have gone through 10 to 20 articles, and I have not seen this diagram or variable PCA
Okay, ma'am.
appearing anywhere.
Also, one more doubt, ma'am. That regarding that 39.5% and 20% in the different axes,
Yeah,
does
the upper
is
one.
that how can we describe the significance
If you can, if
or
it is
relevance?
not about the, it is it relevance. If you can remember, if those of you who have attended the exploratory factor analysis and confirmatory factor analysis, there we try to describe the solution, how the four, remember that says like 3 factor solution, 4 factor solution, explains how much of the variance in the overall model. So that is regarding something model. Here we are not modeling, but again this 4 cluster is able to explain how much of the variance in the data. That is the only thing. And generally it is said that if it is in the biological world, if it is between 40 to 70%, this is considered good. So that's how you can say that 4 cluster, breaking this into 4 cluster was able to explain approximately 60% of the variance of the data. That's how. So it is good actually. This says that it is good.
Ma'am, it's 39.5% and 20%, no?
Yeah, so it is approximately 60%, no? If
Okay.
you like make it whole number.
Okay. Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Anything else? Anyone? Okay, if not, I think we can conclude today's short workshop, you can say, like, okay, so I've announced everything. Is Dr. Sarabjeet here? Uh, I don't know. I saw her name. Is this the same Dr. Sarabjeet? Okay, she's not here. Okay. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
And
ma'am. Thank you so much.
yeah, we are
Thank,
ending the meeting
thank
from
you.
our end.